John Fury's behavior at the Fury Ngannou press conference tonight, in my opinion, significantly had a negative effect on Tyson. And I believe it actually had Tyson looking flustered here in a way that we haven't seen him in any of his recent press conferences. Now, I'm talking here to those of you listening who, like me, have been following Tyson's career for a long time and have seen him at these press conferences going back over a decade at this point. Now, to me, he looked more uncomfortable here than he did even at some of the big fights involving Wilder, the rematches with Wilder, involving Klitschko. This was the most uncomfortable I've seen Tyson at a press conference in a long time, possibly ever, or maybe going all the way back to the early days in his career when he wasn't as comfortable in front of the cameras and in front of the microphone. And I think a lot of that had to do with the way John Fury was behaving, because John himself, in my opinion, wasn't meant to actually be on this press conference. If you didn't watch it, the table was set up where you had Frank Warren and Bob Arum in the middle, and then on the left-hand side, you had Francis Ngannou, his coach Dewey Cooper, and Mike Tyson. On the right-hand side, you had Tyson Fury himself, Sugar Hill Stewart next to him, and Dev Sani, who's the MC, next to him. And all of a sudden, John Fury walks onto the stage. There's not an empty seat for him. So he walks to the center of the table and actually tries to take the seat that Bob Arum was supposed to be sitting in. They move John out to the side of the table so that he's sitting on the end. They have to bring a chair onto the stage for him. And so he's now sitting next to Tyson with only Dev Sani separating them. And I have to tell you, from looking at this from the outside, I thought Tyson looked distinctly rattled and uncomfortable here. And I think a lot of that had to do with not the fact that he's afraid of Francis Ngannou, not the fact that he's intimidated by being on this big stage, but because of the way John Fury was behaving. Now, what I'm saying is, if you watch the press conference, Tyson, from the moment he came out, he looked red in the face, he looked flustered, and he's a very pale guy, and I'm a very pale guy as well. So I know that when you're pale, you tend to go red, and it's hard to hide that when you're getting emotional about something. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're flustered, but if you're getting emotional, if you're getting angry, if you're getting whatever, you turn red and it's hard to hide it. And Tyson Fury's the same way. He was going red. He was looking all over the place. He was fidgeting with his water bottle. He was laughing to an excessive degree where he was trying to put on this front like it wasn't bothering, but it was, because his dad was taking over the whole show and he was making it all about him. And quite frankly, Tyson has talked about in interviews in the past, and actually, Hatman Strikes Back did a whole video about this. So shout out to Hatman, who has one of the best boxing YouTube videos. If you don't already watch him already, go and check him out. But Hatman made a video on his channel a few years ago, I think it was, talking about how John Fury has actually had, in his opinion, a negative impact on Tyson's career, and that the worst points in Tyson's career have often coincided with John Fury being around him. And Hatman in that video even went as far as to point out, and I actually agree with this, that maybe part of the reason Tyson originally relocated himself to the United States and bought a house in Vegas was actually to get away from his dad. Because let's not forget that due to John's, let's say, past troubles with the law, he's not allowed into the United States, at least as far as I'm aware. So in Hatman's opinion, and it's opinion I share, Tyson does not necessarily do well when his dad is too involved, too much a part of the picture. And Tyson himself, in an interview that he did several years ago, actually went as far as to say that he hated having his dad around when they were kids. And in my opinion, at this press conference, you could see clear signs that Tyson was not happy with the way John was behaving, because the entire show became about him. John was talking over every single answer. No matter who was asked the question, the response was coming from John, to the point where other people on the table were getting visibly annoyed at the fact that he was trying to answer questions so aggressively and loudly that you couldn't even hear what anyone else was saying. You couldn't hear Francis Ngannou, who doesn't speak English as his first language, because John was shouting over top of him. When Francis's trainer, Dewey Cooper, was trying to answer questions in a serious way, again, you had John shouting nonsense over top of it. And I understand it's one thing to hype the fight, but the star of this was Francis Ngannou, and Tyson Fury. You didn't need John Fury off to the side. It's not as though Tyson is incapable of speaking for himself. He's not. His speaking ability and his salesmanship is what he's known for, aside obviously from his incredible boxing ability. So he didn't need his dad to be there talk for him, but he was. And Tyson literally could not have looked more uncomfortable than he did here. And in my opinion, whatever chances Francis has of winning this fight, which are small, and they still are small, but they've increased as a result of John's behavior here because Tyson was flustered. And another thing I will say, I think that Mike Tyson may have been deliberately trying to actually wind John Fury up here, and I think it worked because John started going at Mike Tyson early on and trying to hype up a fight between them, which isn't going to happen. And Mike Tyson at first, he just kind of smiled and laughed and brushed it off. But after a few minutes, he started shouting back at John and he started goading him, and John just played into it, and it just made the whole thing about him. But I think Mike Tyson actually, who's a very smart, very analytical mind, did this deliberately, maybe not from the outset, but once he worked out that Tyson was not comfortable with John being around and being the center of attention, Mike Tyson started goading John, and I think the whole package is exactly what Tyson Fury did not need going into this fight. Because another thing, which I said when this was first announced, and I've said it consistently throughout the whole thing, is that Francis Ngannou is deadly serious about this fight. He's taking it, I'm sure, because he's being well paid. But he was talking about this fight years ago. And I know because I listened to him. I follow the UFC as well as boxing. And I was listening to the interviews that he gave 4 years ago at the time where he was talking about going and having fights in professional boxing. He was planning literally as long ago as that to leave the UFC, not because he wanted to get a huge payday, but because he wanted the chance to compete against the best boxers in the world. And what that means is, I think he's being really underestimated here by Tyson Fury's father, who's turned it into a clown show. And if you look in the face-off, Francis is deadly serious. When him and Tyson are face-to-face, you can see in Francis's eyes, he's completely serious. And Tyson didn't. Tyson will be, I'm sure, locked in on the fight night, and he has the superior boxing skills to fall back on. But I promise you right now that Tyson's dad in particular has significantly underestimated how seriously Francis Ngannou is taking this fight. And the same with his coach, with Dewey Cooper and Francis Ngannou sitting at the end of the table when the press conference wrapped up. You could tell those two guys were treating this as though they were fighting John Jones for the heavyweight championship in the UFC, or fighting Stipe Miocic, which was the last fight that he had. They were treating it just as seriously as they treated that fight, or would have treated the John Jones fight if it had actually happened. Now, with Tyson, he had Sugar Hill next to him, and Sugar Hill also looked annoyed at the way that the dad was behaving, because John Fury was turning it into a complete sideshow. But worse than that, it was having an effect on Tyson. If you watched the press conference and you didn't think Tyson was rattled, please let me know in the comments. If you really think I'm off base, let me know. But for me, in my opinion, having followed Tyson's career for a long time, having listened to so many interviews with Tyson, with John Fury, with his uncle Peter, with his cousin Huey Fury, with Emmanuel Stewart, with pretty much every single person that's ever been involved in Tyson's career in a professional capacity, I've never really seen him this rattled in a press conference in a very long time. None of this means that Tyson's going to lose the fight, but I just want to say that I think his dad has done him a real disservice here, and I think that Francis's chances of winning this fight, however small they still are, have increased as a result of what's happened tonight. So let me know in the comments your thoughts. I thought this press conference ended up being a lot more entertaining and a lot more interesting than I was expecting, but let me know your thoughts. I'm looking forward to the fight even more than I was before. I will catch you in the next video, and thank you very much for listening. Guys, if you enjoyed this video, please consider leaving a like and subscribing to my channel. I'll be posting boxing videos just like this 7 days a week, previewing fights, making predictions, and giving my opinions on the latest news. I really appreciate all of your support, and until next time, I am Brendan on Boxing, signing out.